This anime begins, as the hero party has just managed to seal the demon lord away, but even though this is a monumental victory, unless they can defeat him once and for all, the world will always be in danger of being destroyed. They all feel guilty for not being able to complete their mission, but their leader tells them that there's still hope because he is sure that someday in the future a new hero will appear to carry on their legacy and finally finish the demon lord off for good. Several years later, at the A-rank party, Thunder Pike is in the middle of a public dungeon raid, and while the two melee fighters attack, the magic users begin casting their spells, and thanks to the buffs from the party's supporter, Yuke, they are able to take a Hydra down in record time. Individually, the members of Thunder Pike are already really strong, but when they work together, they are nearly unbeatable, which is part of the reason why they have so many fans. However, while they may look like the perfect team on the surface, it turns out they don't really get along as well as you'd think. In fact, after the stream ended, the red mage Yuke tells everyone on the team that he is quitting Thunder Pike effective immediately. The party leader, Simone, asks him why he wants to leave, so Yuke explains that he isn't getting a fair cut of their reward money. The money he received today is so little that he may have to start taking out payday loans, and that's a situation he doesn't want to be in. Simone tries to justify Yuki's low pay by claiming that Yuke isn't contributing enough to the party, and Barry chimes in to point out that Yuke never actually engages in any battles. All he ever does is burn through their items' durability with his pointless enchantments. Yuke can't believe Barry would call his enchantments useless, but Barry isn't the only one who feels that way. The only one who actually thinks Yuke is useful is Jamie, but that's just because he's good at setting up their streams. Camilla tells him that if he wants to be paid more, then he has to be more active as a member of the team, but Yuke doesn't think she has the right to say that since she's basically a healer and Yuke is always protecting her in battle. The fact that they don't value the work he does is exactly why he wants to quit the party, but Simon asks him if he's really sure he can manage on his own if he leaves. He says the only reason Yuke is even B rank is because they are childhood friends and Simon did him a favor by letting him join Thunder Pike, and even if he leaves, they'll be just fine without him. Since they clearly doesn't think Yuke deserves to be paid well, Yuke definitely isn't going to stick around. Yuke has wasted the last 5 years of his life supporting this party, and they would never have gotten this far without his help, but the others still all think he's useless, so they won't miss him at all. Now that Yuke has officially quit Thunder Pike, he heads to the guild receptionist to ask if there's any work available. She's surprised that a famous adventurer like him is here to look for a gig, so she asks him if something happened with Thunder Pike, and Yuke explains that he quit. The receptionist doesn't seem that surprised, since things like this happen all the time, so she hands Yuke a form to fill out so she can give him a new party. Once he's done filling out the form, he hands it to the receptionist, but just then the girl comes running up to him for a big hug. The girl's name is Marina, and she used to be one of Yuke's students back when he taught preliminary adventurer classes half a year ago, and Yuke is glad she's doing all right. She's curious about why Yuke is here, so she asks him, and he tells her that he's currently looking for a new party since he recently left Thunder Pike. Marina doesn't even let him finish his sentence, because if he's looking for a new party, then she would love to have her beloved teacher in hers. Yuke agrees for her proposition, so a few minutes later he is seated with Marina and the rest of her party members, so they can discuss his joining. Silk loves the idea of Yuke joining their party, but she is surprised that an experienced adventurer like him wants to join their D-rank party. Yuke is currently B rank, so he could probably get into a much better party, but he doesn't mind being in a D rank party. And to be honest, he actually prefers it this way. Back when he was in Thunder Pike, they would always take on high-level missions, so Yuke would have to buy a ton of magic items to prepare, which left him in constant debt. That's why he wants to take it easy for a while, and just deal with some low-level quests instead. Since Marina, Silk, and Rain are all on board with the idea, Yuke officially joins their party, and their first mission together is to collect magic iron ore from the Pinto Mine dungeon. It's been a long time since Yuke felt excited to go on a mission like this, and it definitely brings back a lot of old memories from when he was starting out as an adventurer. Yuke recalls that this dungeon has a lot of magic ore veins on the 6th floor, and Silk tells him he is correct, but they were hoping to avoid fighting the 5th floor boss, so Yuke suggests they should start on the 4th floor instead. As they enter the dungeon, Marina takes the lead and uses a stick to check for any traps that may have been set, and Yuke is so proud because she's doing it exactly how he taught her. But for now, he asks her to let him take the lead since he has a more efficient method. Marina doesn't understand what he means since their party doesn't have a scout or thief to detect the traps. But while that may be true, Yuke has a magic item that should be useful in this situation. It's a detection lamp, and thanks to a special type of oil, it illuminates traps, so they can spot them just like a scout would. The lamp really is useful, but Silk asks if it's okay for Yuke to be using it since special oil sounds really expensive. And yes, it normally is, but Yuke made this oil with his alchemy, so it didn't cost him much. The party continues walking down the corridor while carefully avoiding all the traps, until eventually Yuke stops everyone because he can sense something up ahead. He warns the others and tells them that they should prepare for a fight, so they all rush in together and are confronted by a group of boggles. Silk decides to take the initiative and fires the first shot to take one of the boggles down, while Marina runs in to handle the rest. As she does this, Yuke casts overlapping physical enchantments on her so she can fight better. And at the same time, he casts a debuff on the baubles to trip them up. While the baubles are disoriented, Marina goes in for her attack, and in one fluid motion, she's able to cut both of them in half, something even she is surprised by. She turns around to ask Yuke if that feeling she just experienced was his magic, so Yuke confirms that he have cast 3 types of enchantment on Marina to help with her fight. Rain can't believe Yuke was able to cast 3 enchantments at once, and on top of that, he managed to do it with no incantation, but Yuke doesn't think it was all that impressive, so he just says they should keep moving. As they continue through the mine, he asks the girls about their usual dungeon exploration routine, so Marina proudly explains that they always take a break after each floor and check their equipment, just like he taught them to do. Since that's the case, Yuke suggests that they should rest a bit before they continue. After their break, Marina and the others check all their equipment for damage, and everything seems to be in working order, so they are ready to continue their mission and head down to the next floor. On the second floor of the dungeon, the group is suddenly ambushed by a group of undead miners, and the only way to get rid of them is for Rain to use holy magic, so everyone needs to protect her while she uses her chant. Marina and Silk plan to handle the defense, but Yuke tells them he has this covered, so he casts a blessing of light on all of them. And while it won't kill the undead miners, it does stop them from coming any closer, so it's a good defensive measure. Eventually, Rain finishes the holy light spell and uses it to eradicate the undead, and once they are safe, Marina begins praising Rain for a job well done. Yuke praises her as well, since there aren't many people who can use light magic on the scale that Rain just did, but doing that probably drained a ton of her mana, so he casts Refresh Mana to help her recover. Rain can't believe Yuke can use Refresh Mana, since that's a really rare skill. It completely restores the mana of whomever it is cast on, and having that skill alone would make Yuke insanely valuable to any party that works with him, but Yuke thinks she's exaggerating a little because he only learned Refreshed Mana as a way to compensate for having an obscure job like a red mage, although it was really difficult for him to learn it. Afterwards, the group continues walking down the path, and as they go, Yuke begins pouring a liquid on the ground. Silk asks him what he's doing, so Yuke explains that he is pouring holy water over their footprints in order to stop undead monsters from following them. Silk is worried and asks if it's really okay for him to waste his holy water like that since it's really expensive, but Yuke tells her it's fine since once again he made this himself. The group is in shock that Yuke is able to make holy water even though he isn't a priest, but he has a special method for it. By purifying the ashes left behind by the undead when they are defeated, Yuke is able to process it into holy water, and the ashes he got from the undead miners will be more than enough to make up for the amount of holy water he's using. By the time they finally make it to the 3rd floor, Yuke suggests that they should take another break since they'll begin mining from this point forward, and since they haven't eaten for a while, he whips out some cooking utensils from his magic bag and says he will make them a meal. Magic bags aren't that rare, but this is Rain's first time seeing a magic bag in person, so she's really excited. Yuke puts some sausage and eggs in a pan, and while that's cooking up, he pulls out a special pot. The girls watch as he taps on the side of the pot and it instantly fills up, so Yuke explains that the pot is a rare artifact that he found in a royal palace ruin. It basically fills up with a random soup every time you use it, so it's really handy to have. The girls are really grateful to Yuke, since this is the first time they've gotten to have such a good meal while in the middle of a dungeon mission, but when Silk takes a closer look at the food, she realizes that it has mana radiating out of it. She asks Yuke about it, but he tells her there's nothing special about the food since all he did was prepare it with lots of love. His alchemy skills might have accidentally enchanted the food, however, it shouldn't be a problem. The group eventually makes it to the 4th floor of the dungeon and are confronted by a rock lizard, but as the monster charges at them, Yuke casts a slow spell on it, so it practically freezes in place. Marina then rushes forward to attack, and normally she wouldn't risk it, but since Yuki's enchantments have buffed her strength and stamina, she decides to try using her magic blade ability, and with it, she's able to slice the rock lizard's head off in one go. Once the fight is over, Marina is totally exhausted since Magic Blade uses up a ton of her mana, but Yuke encourages her to keep using it as much as possible, because eventually her body will get used to it, but for now, he casts Refresh Mana to help her recover. Anyway, there are a lot of magic ores here, so Yuke begins whining with the girls, and after a little while they've managed to gather a ton of magic ores. Yuke asks if this is enough to fulfill the requirements of their quest, but Silk says they actually need a bit more. Unfortunately, there are no more magic ores on this floor, so their only option now is to defeat the 5th floor boss and go down to the 6th floor to gather the remaining ores. The girls don't like the sound of that since the 5th floor boss is called the Novice Crusher Steel Crab, and they aren't sure they can survive against something like that, but Yuke tells them they don't need to worry since he will do his best to handle a boss on his own. A little while later, they arrive at the boss's room, but before they head in, Yuke pulls out a camera artifact. Rain recognizes the artifact and asks if Yuke plans to live stream his battle, but he was actually just going to record instead. He always records his battles so he can study his mistakes later. If he's going to be recording anyway, Marina asks him to make it a live stream since she thinks it will be a lot of fun. Yuke is fine with live streaming his fight, but while he's setting it up, he realizes he doesn't know the name of this party. He asked him, but Silk tells him they haven't actually thought of a party name yet, and in fact they aren't even officially registered yet. Since that's the case, he asks them if they got any good ideas for a team named, so Marina thinks for a second and comes up with the name Clover, specifically a 4-leaf clover to represent their 4 members, and everyone really likes the name, so from now on they shall be known as Clover. Just then, Yuke realizes that this is going to be a party's first live stream, and he feels bad if he was the only one who got a spotlight, so he asks the others if they want to help him fight the boss, but they all tell him that it's fine for him to handle it solo. In that case, Yuke isn't going to hold back, so he casts Great Blink Shadow and Protector Shield buffs on himself, and then enters the boss room. The Steel Crab awakens and immediately tries to strike Yuke, but he uses his speed buffs to dodge, and once he's out of the crab's range, he begins casting tons of debuff spells on it, and once the crab is sufficiently weakened, he casts a gravity spell to crush it against the floor. With this, the Steel Crab boss has been defeated and it didn't even take him 1 minute to do it, so Yuke is pleased with his performance. He then ends the stream and Marina runs up to hug him for being so amazing, but she's hugging him a little too hard, so the others ask her to let go before Yuke ends up in a wheelchair. After making sure his back is fine, Yuke tells everyone that they should bring the Steel Crab's body back to the guild, so they can sell the parts. He stores the entire things in his magic bag, and that's a huge help since they never would have been able to carry it back by themselves. So far, Yuke has been indispensable to their party, but Silk doesn't think it's fair for them to constantly be relying on Yuke like this, so Yuke suggests that next time they have a boss battle, everyone can participate so they'll gain some experience. The girls like the sound of that, but for now they still have to open the treasure chest they get for killing the floor boss, and when they do, they find a ton of magic ores so it looks like they won't have to mine anymore after all. The story continues. Dungeon streams are really popular all around the world, as they are a great source of publicity. The big companies often offer sponsorship deals to popular streamers, and right now Yuke's popularity is at an all-time high because the video of him defeating the Steel Crab with nothing but status effects spells has gone viral. Meanwhile, Yuke and the others are returning home, and while on the carriage, Yuke asks them what they thought of their first mission together, and the girls absolutely loved it. They learned all sorts of cool things from Yuke, so this was easily the best mission they've completed so far. In fact, they were all thinking of making Yuke the official leader of their party, since he has the most experience, and they all trust him with their lives since he was their teacher. Yuke is hesitant to accept the role since he never intended to take over Marina's party, but since they all say they want him to do it, he ends up agreeing, mostly so he can ensure their safety in future battles. While Yuke's party is celebrating their first victory, Thunder Pike is suffering a crushing defeat. Simon hired a new guy to replace Yuke after he quit, but he must still not realize how much Yuke is carrying their party, because he led them right into wolf territory and expected everything to just work out. Normally, Yuke would have cast a weakening spell in the wolves by now, but the new guy can't do that, so the wolves are way too strong for the party to handle, and as a result, Jamie gets chomped. Simon sees her in trouble and rushes to save her by decapitating the wolf, and while Jamie is technically safe now, her stomach is full of holes, so she'll die if she doesn't get help soon. Simon asks Camelot to cast a healing spell on Jamie, but Camelot says she's out of mana, so there's nothing she can do. It's not like they had a guy who could cast a mana restoration spell, did they? The group retreats to safety and Simon administers first aid to try and keep Jamie alive while Camilla's mana recharges. He asks if anyone has a healing potion, and the new guy, Cork, has one, but he doesn't feel like giving it to Simon since Simon made it painfully clear that he was responsible for buying his own equipment with his own money. Simon tells him that now is not the time to be worrying about money when one of his teammates is about to die, so Cork reluctantly hands over the healing potion and Simon feeds it to Jamie. Thunder Pike has really been on a downward spiral lately, but on the flip side, everything has been working out for Yuke. He and the girls are sitting at the bar to celebrate, and while the reward for their quest wasn't that high, the steel crab's body was in good condition, so the guild paid a good price for it. Speaking of money, Yuke asks Marina and the others what system they've been using to split up the party's earnings, so they tell them that Silk usually handles all the party's money, and each member gets a set allowance. Yuke is a little surprised since it's rare for a party to entrust all the money to a single member, but the group has a reason for that. They've all been saving up so they can eventually afford to buy a house as a party, since it's a little awkward to have to be renting at the inn all the time. Since they're trying to save their money, Yuke tells them it's fine if they continue with the allowance system. Silk asks if he is really okay with her handling all the finances, since she thought an adventurer like him would want to handle his own money. But Yuke trusts her, so there's no reason to change the system they already have. While Yuke and the other are having fun and getting along, Simon and the rest of Thunder Pike are upset, because that was the worst outcome they had in years. Thankfully, they were able to save Jamie's life, but things could have gone really badly, and Simon blames it all on Cork. The rest of the party get in on it and start calling Cork useless for not being able to get them out of that mess. But Cork isn't going to let them put the blame on him since everyone knows that dire wolves track their prey through scent, so it's common sense to buy a scent blocker in preparation for the mission. This is clearly the party's fault for not being prepared for the situation, but Simon tries to turn it around on Cork and says that if he knew about the scent blockers then he should have told them. And the fact that Jamie almost died is entirely his fault too, because he didn't buy scent blockers for the entire party. The gaslighting is strong with this one, but thankfully it's not strong enough to fool Corks, so he realizes he wants no part in a party where no one is willing to take accountability for their mistakes and quits on the spot. Yuke overhears this, and he can't believe Thunder Pike still hasn't learned from their mistakes, but that doesn't concern him anymore. He turns back to the girls, and Marina tells everyone what they should do for tomorrow. Silk remembers something Yuke once told her about it being important to take a day off after every mission, so she suggests that they do that. Everyone agrees, and since Yuke is going to have the day off, he decides to get a little shopping done. He needs to stock up on potions and scrolls, and he still needs to turn those undead ashes he got into holy water so he can replenish his stock. He's going to be busy for a while, so he suggests that they all meet back up here after their break is over. Just then, Marina notices that the dungeon string highlights of the day are being shown, and Yuki's fight against the steel crab is number 1. He is shocked since he only uploaded it a couple of hours ago, but it already has over 5,000 viewers, and it's still going up. People find it really interesting that someone with an obscure job like a red mage was able to take down a red crab without even needing to touch it. The announcers tell everyone to keep an eye on Yuke and his party Clover, because they just might become the world's greatest party. Simon and the other members of Thunder Pike see Yuki's stream as well, and they are all incredibly jealous that Yuke is actually doing well without them, but they still refuse to admit that Yuke might have been more useful to them than they gave him credit for. Thunder Pike is always going to be a bunch of haters, but it looks like there is actually someone else hating on Yuke from a distance, and he seems mad that Yuke is getting comfortable with his new party. A couple of days later, Yuke is back in the guild and he's looking at the notice board to see if he can find any quests that will be good for the girls. The receptionist sees him struggling to decide, so she comes over and asks if she can help. Yuke asks her if there are any quests that are easy enough for a party of noobs, but also paying a decent amount of money. The receptionist tells him that he is being a little too optimistic here. He's never going to find such a perfect quest, but given the circumstances, she points to an C-rank quest that involves fetching some magic stones from the Orden Forest. Yuke thinks this just might work, but he's a little curious as to why the quest is C rank when fetching magic stones will usually only be D rank. The receptionist explains that there has been a large magical beast sighted near the forest, so this quest is slightly more dangerous than normal. Just then, Marina enters the guild, and as soon as she hears the word quest, she immediately yells that their party will accept it. Yuke asks her to at least let him finish explaining before she agrees to do the quest, but Marina says she doesn't need to know the details, since if Yuke thinks they can handle it, then she is sure they'll be able to get it done. It shouldn't be too hard anyway, since she and the others have done a quest in that forest before, although she doesn't understand why this quest would be C rank when all the other quests are D rank. This is when Yuke chimes in and says that the quest is C rank, because there is a magic beast living somewhere in that forest now. Hearing that there's a magical beast in the forest makes the girls reconsider whether it's a good idea to take that quest after all, but they ultimately decide to just go with it anyway, since if Yuke is with them, then they are sure everything will work out in the end. In that case, Yuke tells them all to get their items ready, and to meet him an hour later in front of the stagecoach, so they can head to the forest. Just then, the receptionist returns with the quest receipt, and all this seems a little too convenient, so he asks the receptionist if she planned things so they would end up like this, and she doesn't deny having some part in this. The stream Yuke made yesterday ended up earning him more than 10,000 fans, and they are all eager to see Yuki's next stream. Yuke is a little embarrassed since he hadn't realized his stream would earn him so much attention. He sees no harm in continuing to stream his fights since he'll bring attention to the girls, and if they happen to find that magical beast having on video would be great for the guild's records. While Yuke was talking about all this, the man from before is getting more and more infuriated, so as Yuke leaves the guild, he follows him. Yuke immediately realizes that he's being followed since the guy doing it is doing a terrible job at it, so he ducks into an alleyway to get away. He was hoping to lose his stalker, but for a fat guy, he's pretty quick and catches up to Yuke. Yuke asks him if he has any business with him, so the man demands that Yuke quit Clover immediately. Yuke obviously says that's not going to happen, especially since he's the leader of the party. The guy can't believe those girls would make Yuke their leader after just one day together, even though they offered to join their party $1,000,000, and they kept turning him down. Yuke understands what's going on here. This guy wanted to get himself a harem of cute adventurer girls, but Marina and the others refused to let him join, and now seeing another guy live, his dream has made him irrational. The man draws his sword to attack if Yuke doesn't agree to leave the girls' party, so Yuke quietly casts his snare trap at the man's feet and then turns to walk away. As Yuke is walking away, the man really does try to attack him, but Yuki's trap causes him to slip and fall on the ground. Once he's on the carriage, he talks to the girls about his random encounter. They recognize the guy as Bezio and tell Yuke that the guy has been trying to join their party for so long. They ask if Yuke is alright since they would hate it if something bad were to happen to him because of them. But Yuke assures them it is not their fault, and besides, he left that guy unconscious in the middle of the street, so they can just report him when they get back to town. In the meantime, before they get to their destination, Yuke wants to go over their mission objective one last time. They are going to fetch 3 magic stones from the Orden Forest, and since the others say they've been here before, he asks them what it was like when they got here. According to Marina, they had been here 2 months ago, but now that she thinks about it, she didn't run into any monsters at all. After hearing this, Yuke realizes that the magical beast must have already been in the forest 2 months ago, and if they encounter it, he's going to be live streaming. This way, the guild gets valuable information about the beast, and in the event that they can't defeat it, it'll be easy to call for backup if needed. Once they arrive in the forest, Yuke begins the stream and the group starts making their way through the forest. Yuke decided to be the rear guard since beasts usually attack from behind, but Marina asks if it's really alright for him to be at the rear since he's in the most danger there. Yuke tells her she doesn't need to worry since not only can he use Blink Step to get away if his life really is in danger, his clothes also have really good defense stats, so he can take a couple of hits before he goes down. They soon reach the waterfall where they are meant to gather the magic stones, but just before they could reach there, Yuke tells everyone to wait because he can sense something coming. The magic beast finally reveals itself, but all the confidence Yuke had earlier goes about the window, because that thing is a high-level monster that's usually only found in the deepest parts of the dungeon, a Zarnag. The girls are nowhere near strong enough to handle this thing or even survive a minute against it, so Yuke gets in front of them and tells Silk to lead the others back to the Adventurers Guild and get back up while he holds this thing off here. However, the girls know that Yuke doesn't stand a chance against that thing either if he is fighting solo, so they refuse to leave his side, otherwise he might really die. Yuke can't really argue with that, so he agrees to have them fight with him and cast his enchantment spells on them. He and Marina are handling the front line, so Marina charges forward first, but the Zarnag squats her away effortlessly. Yuke tries to use his layered status effects on it, and while it does disorient the Zarnag, it doesn't do much damage to it, so he's running low on options. Right now, there's only one thing in his arsenal that can stop this thing, so Yuke decides to go all or nothing. However, he will meet Marina to buy him some time so he can finish casting the spell. Marina agrees to distract the beast, so she gets up close to it and does her best to keep its attention while dodging its attacks. And even when she's about to get caught, Silk and Rain assist with their magic. Thanks to their combined efforts, Yuke had enough time to finish casting the level 5 spell, a highly destructive prismatic missile, and now that it's complete, Yuke fires it straight at the beast's face. The story continues. We see after the prismatic missile hits, it doesn't look like it did much at first, but soon after, a monster begins coughing up blood so has been badly injured. Rain then casts a grade 5 Thunderbolt spell to electrocute the monster, and while it is paralyzed, Yuke orders Marina to chop its head off. Marina charges forward and activates her magic sword while Yuke buffs her with a critical attack spell, and as a result she's able to cleave the monster's head from his body in one swing. Now that it's finally over, Yuke falls to his knees in relief because he can't believe they managed to defeat the monster without any of them dying, and back in town, all the spectators of the stream are equally as amazed, especially by the spell Yuke used because no one has seen anything like it before, but there's always got to be that one hater in the crowd. Back in the forest, Yuke is feeling a little lightheaded because of all the mana he had to use during the fight, but overall he's still in good condition. He's glad everything worked out, but that fight was way too tough for a group of newbies like them, and the only reason they managed to make it out alive was because they got lucky. He tells the girls that he's going to scold them later because of their reckless behavior, but the girls think Yuke was just as reckless as they were because he initially ran into battle alone, totally expecting to get himself killed, and that's unacceptable behavior. Yuke can't deny that he was prepared to sacrifice himself, so he compromises and says they can all talk about their grievances later. For now, they should probably wash themselves off since they are all covered in sweat and Marina is covered in Zarnag blood. While the girls bathe in the river, Yuke starts setting up camp and this whole thing brings back fond memories from 6 months ago. Back then, Yuke was in charge of training Marina's team and he was impressed with how well the girls were adjusting to the job of adventuring, but there were a few areas they could improve in. Marina was a little clumsy, Silk was overly cautious and Rain was really timid. But despite all that, with how well they were performing, if it were up to Yuke, he would have given them their D-rank adventurer licenses right then. Later that night, the girls had set up their tent, prepared firewood and alarms in case of monster attacks, and as Yuke watched them work back then, he could feel a sense of pride because he knew they would turn out to be great adventurers in the future, but he never could have imagined that he would end up joining their party. A few days later, the party is back at the guild, and it looks like they've been summoned to meet the guildmaster, so the girls are a little nervous. They ask Yuke if this means they are in some kind of trouble, but he thinks this meeting is probably about the Zarnag they defeated. A mission like that should have been classified as B rank. However, for some reason it was marked as D rank, so some investigation is definitely warranted. Just then, the guildmaster of Benwood walks in and the girls are so intimidated by his presence that they immediately stand at attention. He walks up to Yuke and demands that he explain himself, but Yuke did nothing wrong here, so he tells Benwood that he already provided all the relevant information in the report he wrote to the guild. Benwood isn't satisfied with an objective report, so he demands a detailed explanation. But before they discuss anything, Yuke tells Benwood to drop the tough guy act because it's scaring the girls. Marina tries to stop Yuke from talking to the guildmaster so casually since he is a really powerful person, but the guildmaster actually respects Yuke a lot, so there's no need for formalities between them. Benwood tells everyone they can sit down, and Benwood already knows what happened in the forest, but he wants to know what Yuke thinks about the whole situation. Yuke tells him that he suspects that this might have been the result of an overflow, causing a monster several levels stronger than usual to appear. Benwood agrees with Yuki's conclusion and immediately has his secretary issue an emergency investigation quest to get to the bottom of it. Both Yuke and Benwood seem to understand how serious overflows can be, but Marina has no idea what that is, so she asks Yuke for an explanation. Yuke tells her that an overflow is a phenomenon that occurs when a catalyst causes monsters in the dungeon to spill out. Usually the monsters that live in the dungeon are bound there by the mana that flows in the ground, but sometimes those shackles can be broken, allowing the monster to escape the dungeon and terrorize the surrounding area. This could also be evidence of a possible dungeon stampede in the near future. The girls have heard about dungeon stampedes and the chaos they can cause as they tear through towns like a wildfire, and if monsters as strong as that Zarnag are appearing already and they don't have much time. Benwood intends to investigate the matter thoroughly to ensure the safety of the people. But before that, he sincerely apologizes to the girls for putting them in such danger. The girls tell him he doesn't need to apologize since they all made out alive, although if they didn't have Yuke with them, they would have been goners. That said, even though Yuke did most of the heavy lifting, their live stream proved that the girls are capable fighters, so as a reward for doing so well against the Zarnag, Benwood intends to promote all of them to C rank, although the promotion depends on the girls having Yuki's assistance since he is a rank. Yuke doesn't know what Benwood is talking about since he is only B rank, but that's when Benwood informs him that he is getting a promotion as well. Everyone who watched the livestream saw the high-level prismatic missile spell he used on the Zarnag, so it is abundantly clear that Yuke deserves a promotion, and starting today he will now be an A-rank adventurer. Afterwards, Yuke and the girls head downstairs to have a drink and congratulate each other on their promotions. While they are all together, Yuke pulls out the bag of coins he got as the reward for their quest and gives it to Silk to count out. Silk opens the bag and she is shocked because she has never seen so many gold coins in one place before. Yuke explains that even though the quest was originally D rank because of the difficulty, it ended up being treated as a B rank quest, so the payout is a lot higher than it would have been otherwise. Silk puts all the coins on the table so she can start counting, but then she notices a piece of paper at the bottom of the bag and it has Yuki's name on it, so she gives it to him. Yuke opens it and it turns out to be a note from Benwood, apologizing for everything Yuke had to go through. There's also a platinum coin in there as a little bonus for Yuke. Platinum coins are really valuable, so Yuke adds it to the party's funds, and after Silk finishes counting it all, she tells everyone that they have enough money to buy a house now. Marina is so excited to hear that she jumps up and accidentally knocks the coins over. Silk is glad they reached their financial goal as well, but she feels a little bad about it since the only reasons they got this much money was because of Yuke. While that may be true, Yuke tells Silk she doesn't have to think of it that way. They made him the leader of Clover, and it is natural for a leader to do whatever it takes to help out the group. As such, even if he played a major role in earning this money, it still belongs to all of them. The group continues to celebrate late into the night, and at one point Rain asks Yuke if he has a dream he wants to accomplish. Yuke is caught off guard by the question, so he asks if there's a specific reason she's asking, and Rain explains that they just reached their goal of purchasing a house thanks to Yuke, so she wants to know what Yuke's dream is so they can help him achieve it. Since she asks, Yuke tells her that his dream is to conquer the deepest floors of the Achromatic Darkness dungeon. As soon as the girls hear this, they spit up their drinks in surprise, because the dungeon is quite literally the most dangerous one out there. It even possesses an Abyss Gate, an artifact known to be a direct gateway to the underworld. Yuke says the Abyss Gate is precisely why he wants to conquer the Achromatic Darkness, so Rain asks him if he intends to go through the Abyss Gate if he reaches it. However, Yuke explains that he just wants to see what the edge of this world looks like. An uncle of his once took on the dungeon and tried to get to the gate, and although he wasn't successful, Yuke was told the stories so many times as a kid that he decided he wanted to try it himself. Although he knows that it'll probably never happen, Marina likes the sound of Yuke's dream, so she suggests that they should all go to the Achromatic Darkness and try to accomplish Yuke's dream. Yuke tells her it's not that simple since that dungeon is so dangerous that just entering it requires permission from the government, and you'd have to be an A-rank party to gain approval. Even so, Rain still thinks it'd be a good idea, so she says she wants it to be her party's next goal. All the others agree and promise to work hard to make Yuke's dream a reality, but they won't be attempting it anytime soon though. With each passing day, Clover's streams have been gaining more and more popularity. Right now they are streaming a battle against an undead hand, and thanks to their flawless teamwork, they are able to take it down with a lightning spell from Rain and a rock scroll from Yuke. That concludes the stream, so they wave to their fans, and everyone at the guild absolutely loves them, all except the members of Thunder Pike who hate how popular Yuke has become. Barry thinks Yuke's only looks impressive because he is in a team of newbies, but Simon actually heard that Yuke recently got promoted to a rank, so he might just be that good. Besides, Yuke's popularity isn't their biggest concern right now. Thunder Pike has been constantly failing quests recently, and Simon thinks it's because all the new people they hire end up being useless morons. In fact, none of them ever end up sticking around for more than one day, but that can't be because there's something wrong with their team, right? Speaking of their team, Simon asks why Jamie isn't here, so Camilla explains that Jamie wasn't in the mood for a drink. Simon gets pissed since after that mission where Jamie got mauled by a wolf, she's been slowing the team down constantly. As for Jamie herself, she has locked herself in her room and has been watching videos of Yuke's live stream on repeat for hours now. The other members of Thunder Pike are starting to realize that Yuke may have been more useful than they gave him credit for, so since the reason Yuke quit in the first place was because of his low pay, they could just increase his cut a little, and since Jamie hasn't been doing much lately, they can cut her pay instead. A few hours later, Yuke and the others return to the guild to report the success of their mission, but as they arrive at the front door, they find Simon waiting there for Yuke. Seeing Simon again makes Yuke a little angry, so he tells the girls to head inside without him, and then he asks Simon what he wants. Simon gets to the point and says he is allowing Yuke the honor of rejoining Thunder Pike. Yuke can't believe the shit that just came out of Simon's mouth, but Simon tries to manipulate Yuke into considering it by reminding him that his dream to see the Abyss Gate can only come true if he's part of an A-rank party like Thunder Pike. Plus, ever since Yuke bailed on Thunder Pike, they've been struggling to complete quests, so Simon says it's Yuki's responsibility to come back and make things right. Yuke listened to everything Simon had to say, but it's too bad he doesn't care though. He and Simon may have been childhood friends, but that means nothing after all the disrespect Simon has given him, so Yuke wants nothing to do with him ever again. He then walks inside, leading Simon to stew over the consequences of his actions, and meanwhile Bezio was watching the whole thing, and he seems to have a sinister idea in mind. Back inside, Yuke meets up with the girls, and they ask him what happened with the guy outside. Yuke explains that that was Simon, the leader of his former party, and as soon as Marina hears this, she gets worried because Yuke might end up rejoining Thunder Pike. But as Yuke stated earlier, nothing on earth would ever make him go back to that shit show of a party. That aside, they still have to report their mission success to the guild, so they all head to the reception desk and afterwards they'll have drinks to celebrate. The story continues. We see next day, Yuke calls a meeting to tell the girls about a quest they received. Marina is already prime and ready to go, but Yuke tells her to sit down first and at least listen to what the quest is about. He tells them that their party has been specifically requested by Earthies. The girls are surprised since Earthies is the most well-known workshop in the country. In fact, Silk's bow was made at Earthies, so it's an honor to be specifically requested by them. However, the girls still wonder why Earthies would choose Clover of all parties. Yuke explains that Earthies is launching a new theme of equipment for ladies that is both stylish and safe, so they basically want Marina, Silk and Rain to conquer a dungeon while wearing the new outfits in order to promote the brand. Marina can't believe they're really going to be poster girls for a brand as big as Earthies, but Silk and Rain are already fixing their hair for the mission. It's a really good deal since they get paid to conquer a dungeon and get to keep the armor afterwards, so they tell Yuke they'll accept the offer and the group later sets out for Iron Dungeon. When the day for the quest finally arrives, Yuke meets up with the girls outside the dungeon, and they've already changed into the new Earthies gear. Yuke tells them they all look really cute and on top of looking good, the equipment is all really functional so he thinks it suits them. But for some reason, Rain seems to be upset with him and he doesn't know why. The group enters the dungeon, and as they do, Yuke explains that this dungeon is relatively old and only has 4 floors, but at the bottom there is an entrance to a separate dungeon, which is what they will be clearing. To get to the second dungeon's main entrance, Yuke says they're going to have to take the stairs, but those stairs are really long, so Marina asks if they can just climb down the middle with a rope to save time. Yuke tells her that normally she would be right and people have tried doing that in the past, but this dungeon has a distortion field preventing you from going anywhere that isn't a designated path. He tells them to be careful not to get caught in the field, but then he notices that Rain still seems upset, so he asks her if he did something wrong. Rain doesn't say anything, but the others know why she's upset, so they tell Yuke to take a closer look at Rain's outfit. Yuke looks at Rain, trying to see if there's something he missed, and that's when he notices that she changed her ribbon bow color to blue instead of red today. Rain was upset that he hadn't complimented her on it, so Yuke tells her it looks good on her and she feels a lot better. They then head down to the second floor and thanks to his lantern, Yuke spots a trap ahead so he tells the girls to stand back while he takes care of it. He pulls out a long stick, and with it he taps the trap, causing several dozen spears to spring up from the ground, walls, and ceiling. That would have been an unpleasant way to die. But since he has already triggered it, it should be safe for them to continue forward now. They are going to have to squeeze through all the spears, so while walking, Yuke asks if anyone is having any trouble. Thankfully, since their new armor is so snug, the girls have no trouble passing through the spears. Once they make it a little farther down the corridor, Yuke senses something up ahead and warns the girls to get ready for battle. The group comes face to face with a group of orcs, and the second Silk sees the orcs, years of generational hatred comes flowing back into her mind. Yuke knows that orcs are the natural enemy of elves, but he asks Silk to remain calm so she doesn't make a mistake. Yuke plans to hit them with powerful magic first, then Marina will attack with her sword, and Silk can provide backup from the rear. Now that everyone knows the plan, Yuke casts his enchantment spells and Rain begins casting a fireball spell. Once she's done, she shoots it at the orcs, setting them ablaze, so Yuke then joins in with a rock blast. While the orcs try to evade his rocks, Silk shoots one in the neck and another was crushed, so there are only 2 left now. Marina charges in, and as the last 2 orcs charge forward, Yuke hits them with a paralyze and slow spell, allowing Marina to chop one clean in half, while the other gets shot in the neck by Silk. Marina then finishes it off by splitting the orc's head in half. Now that the battle is finally over, Yuke walks over to the orc corpses to pick up the magic stones and asks Silk if she has calmed down now. Silk apologizes for her outburst, but she can't help but be filled with rage whenever she sees an orc. Yuke understands that she can't control her reaction to orcs, since it's just a part of being an elf. Just then, Marina comes up to Yuke and tells him she just found something weird on one of the orcs' bodies. She hands it to him, and after inspecting it, Yuke realizes it's a Memorandum of Revelation scroll. It's an artifact that can uncover hidden abilities in people who use it. It's kind of odd that a low-ranked orc would have something like this, but in its current state, it's not that valuable since it's so damaged. However, it would be a waste to sell it off, so Yuke says he's going to fix it and let one of the girls use it. Silk asks what happens if one of them uses the scroll, so Yuke explains that it will unlock a hidden talent. For example, it might grant you a second job, or maybe a new skill. If that's what the Revelation Scroll does, then Rain and Silk suggest that Marina should use it when it's repaired, since she only has one job right now. Marina is a little hesitant to accept since sword mages are rare and she's not sure she has the potential to become one. Still, Yuke thinks it's worth a try anyway, since even if she doesn't get a second job, she might end up uncovering some sort of hidden ability. Just then, a chest appears as their reward for defeating the orc, and after opening it, they continue walking until they get to the break room between floors. The reward they got from the chest was a magic bag, so Rain is over the moon with joy since everyone said she could have it. Mostly because its magic bags are more useful to people in support roles. If they manage to find another one at some point, Yuke thinks it would be best if Silk got to have it, since it would allow her to store more arrows. Once their break is over, they all get up, but before they continue, he wants to review the team's losses and gains. Yuke used one of his scrolls, but his mana levels are still decent, and Marina feels perfectly fine. Silk used 5 arrows when they fought against the orcs, but she's got 20 left, and as for Rain, she is ready to continue. Since everyone is still in good condition, they continue down to the 3rd floor and Yuke warns everyone to stay alert since even though this floor doesn't have a floor boss, they have to be ready in case they get attacked. There used to be a door to the main dungeon, the abandoned city, but around 10 years ago the door just vanished so anyone can just walk in now. It is said that in the past, the door was guarded by multiple shadow stalkers, and from what Yuke knows, the shadow stalkers are supposed to look like solid black mannequins with shiny eyes, but those things haven't been seen in years, so there's no way they've run into one here. However, there's a black mannequin with shiny eyes just staring at them menacingly from the 3rd floor, so Marina asks if they should be concerned about that. That thing is definitely a shadow stalker, and Yuke thinks it's unbelievable that they are actually seeing one here, so he makes sure the recorder gets a good view of it. The shadow stalker may look creepy, but they don't have to worry for now since it's on the 3rd floor. There's no way it can cross the distortion field. However, the shadow stalker proceeds to jump down and pierce through the distortion field like it's nothing, so they might be in trouble after all. Yuke tells everyone to get ready to fight and pulls out a scroll of multi-enchant to buff the girls as much as possible. But even with all the enchantments, when the Shadow Stalker launches its first attack, it takes Marina out in one hit. Rain rushes over to Marina's side to heal her while Silk provides cover, but Yuke still can't believe that the Shadow managed to shatter his multi-enchant barrier so easily. The Shadow prepared another attack, so Yuke charges forward and casts a protection barrier on himself. But the Shadow's attack easily shatters it, so Yuke comes to the conclusion that the Shadow's attack must be specifically made to destroy barriers, so he switches tactics and casts Blink Shadow on himself, so he can avoid being hit altogether and sneak up on the Shadow to slay it. However, before he could strike, the Shadow turns around and hits Yuke with a dark magic curse that leaves him immobilized, so there might really be no way to beat it. The Shadow then casts another curse, but Rain manages to block it with a holy shield, while Silk counterattacks with her Dryad Vines. While the Shadow is busy, Rain tries to heal Yuke like she did with Marina, but to her horror, she discovers that Yuke isn't breathing. At the same time, the Shadow slashes Silk across the back and Marina manages to chase it off, but it's moving way too quickly for her to hit it, so Rain decides to use a wide area spell to take it down. She casts Icicle Rain and aims it at the Shadow, but it disappears and slashes both Marina and Rain in the back. Now all the girls have been badly injured, but the Shadow isn't down yet because it then proceeds to cast dozens of Eclipse cannons and fires them straight at the girls. This would have been the end of them, but at the last second Yuke returns and casts a light shield over them. He covers the floor in 1000 trip spells so the Shadow can't get away, and then he begins spamming every possible debuff effect he can cast to weaken it, while also casting buffs on the girls to heal him. Now that the girls are back in fighting shape, Silk traps the shadow in her vines, granting Rain enough time to cast her undead spell to erase the shadow. The battle is finally over and Marina is so glad that Yuke is still alive that she gives him a big hug, but Yuke tells her that her hug is bringing him dangerously close to dying again. Once Marina lets go of him, Yuke thanks her, because if she hadn't spotted the Shadow Stalker when she did, it might have gotten them with a surprise attack, and that would have been a guaranteed death sentence for them. He then asked Rain what she thought of the shadow, so Rain says it was undead, but its mana was in disarray, so it felt like the shadow's existence shouldn't have been possible. Furthermore, it shouldn't have been able to pass through the distortion field, so in all likelihood it must have been the result of a dungeon overflow. Silk asks Yuke what he thinks they should do, and since they are already at the bottom floor, he suggests that they should at least finish their quest before they head back up. In that case, Marina asks if they should inform everyone of the Shadow Stalker with a stream, but Yuke would rather not since they are wearing Earthy's unreleased equipment line, so he doesn't want to show it to the public without permission from the client. Yuke suggests they finish the quest quickly so they can get out of here, so they keep moving and head down to the corridor. There they find the door that leads to the abandoned city, and according to the legends, people once lived in there. However, their quest only requires them to make it to the gate, not enter, so once they touch it, they turn around and head back to the surface. After returning, Yuke makes his report to the guild, and once he is done, he meets up with the girls who are waiting outside. Silk asked him how it went, so Yuke tells her he submitted the footage they recorded and told the guild about the Shadow Stalker. The guild will likely want to interview them about it later, so Yuke suggests they should take the next 2 days off and stay in Qualto. Marina likes the sound of that, so she asks Yuke if he'd like to go on a date with all of them. Silk isn't familiar with the city, so she was hoping Yuke would show her around, and Rain wants to see all the artifacts this city has to offer. Yuke sees no reason to reject their offer, so he agrees to go on a date with them. The story continues. We see Thunder Pike continues going on adventures to try and maintain their status as an A-rank party, but Barry has been complaining a lot about their rations because they always used to get good food from Yuke when he was around. Simon tells him there's no use in complaining about it now, so he suggests they keep going and asks everyone if they still have enough mana and potions. Barry tells him he didn't buy any potions because why would he waste his money on healing potions when he can just have Camilla heal him instead? But Camilla doesn't have infinite mana, you know. Simon tells them to stop arguing and asks Jamie to get their stream up and running so they can continue. While she's working on it, Barry starts calling her weak and useless for no reason, and the others join in on it. They've been on an uncontrollable downward spiral lately, and since Yuke isn't around for them to blame their problems on, they've started taking it out on Jamie, and there's nothing she can do about it. While this mission was yet another failure, as they return to the guild, Mommer tells them that if they keep failing missions like this, then there's a chance they may be demoted. She tells Simon that his party might be better off accepting quests that are a little easier so they can actually complete it this time. And personally, she suggests they should aim for C-rank quests next time. Simon is outraged that she would say such a thing to an A-rank adventurer, but she tells him he hasn't been producing any A-rank results, so he won't be getting special treatment. Simon once again tries to blame his shortcomings on others, and says it's the guild's fault for not introducing them to someone he can manipulate into doing the heavy lifting for the team. But Mommer doesn't give a damn about his excuses and sends him away. With nothing else to do, Thunder Pike sits at a table to brood, but Jamie sits at his separate table because she doesn't get along with the others so well anymore. Barry is still angry that Mommer would threaten to demote them, but Simon calms him down because Mommer was right about them. They haven't been performing as well as they used to, so maybe an A-rank missions are a little too much for them to handle right now with just the 4 of them. However, if Simon thinks their lack of a 5th member is a problem, then Camilla tells him to hurry up and find a new member for their party, since that's his job as the leader. Simon knows Camilla is right, but even if he finds someone else, there's no way he would get someone as good as Yuke was, so Barry asks him if they can just bring Yuke back to Thunder Pike. However, Simon already tried that and Yuke turned him down, so if he's going to bring Yuke back, then he's going to have to do something to convince him to ignore the past few years of gaslighting he had to endure. That's why Simon suggests that they should take a mission in the Achromatic Darkness dungeon, since it has always been Yuke's dream to conquer it because he wanted to find an abyss gate. Simon thinks they can lure Yuke back into their party if they pretend that they are interested in clearing the dungeon, since only rank parties are allowed to go in there, so there's no way Yuke could do it with the newbie girls in his party. Barry thinks this is a great idea, so he agrees with Simon's plan and Jamie is just wondering how she ended up stuck with a bunch of idiots like them. Meanwhile, Yuke and the girls are heading out in town, and while walking to their destination, Yuke tells them that he heard the Iron Dungeon was temporarily closed for an investigation, although it shouldn't be surprising since a shadow stalker did show up for the first time in 10 years. As they continue walking down the street, they eventually find the man they are here to meet, and he takes them to inspect a house that they are interested in buying. Monday shows them around and the house looks pretty good, but Yuke doesn't think it's right for them since ground floor homes are easy targets for burglary. It's hard to stop people from looking in through the windows, which is a major privacy concern since the girls will be living here. In that case, Monday offers to show them a different property and leads the group to a second house. This one was newly remodeled into a family home and has private bedrooms on the second floor along with an underground storage space and roof access. Marina thinks this place is great and Yuke likes it too, but he still hasn't made a decision on it yet, so he asks Monday if he could put a hold on this house for a little while. Monday says he will keep the house on the market in case Yuke decides to buy it, but for now he has one last property to show them. Yuke and the others follow him to the next house, but as they walk, Yuke starts feeling a bit uneasy. Rain notices this, so she asks Yuke if something is wrong and he tells her it's not a huge deal, but Thunder Pike's base is near here, so he's a little worried he might run into them while he's here. As soon as the girls hear this, they tell Monday they don't want to see the last house. They don't want to risk living in the same neighborhood as Thunder Pike, so it could be a 7-story mansion for all they care. They don't want it. Marina suggests they just buy the last house they saw since that one was pretty good, and Yuke agrees that same day they get everyone's stuff moved over to the new house. Yuke says he will help the girls put their stuff in the house, so he asks if they decided which rooms they want, but they were actually waiting for Yuke to choose his room first. Yuke is confused, so he asks them if they are saying they want him to live with them, and that's exactly what the girls are saying, since this is meant to be a party base after all. And it's all thanks to Yuke that they could even afford to buy the house in the first place, so of course they want him to live with them. Yuke is hesitant to live under the same roof as the girls, but Marina reminds him that when they camp out on their adventures, Yuke has no problem sleeping right next to them, so this shouldn't be any different. It's hard to argue with that logic, so Yuke agrees to move in, but he's setting some ground rules. He tells the girls to keep in mind that he's a man, so they have to actually use their door locks when they are changing their clothes or something. He just really doesn't want to get forced into embarrassing situations, and as long as they all respect each other's privacy, there shouldn't be any issues. With that settled, they sit down at the lunch table to eat and toast to their future as Clover. However, Yuke notices that Rain is a little distracted, so he looks at the TV and to his surprise, he sees a report about a party taking on the Achromatic Darkness dungeon. The announcer talks about how Thunder Pike receives permission from the guild to perform an investigation in the Achromatic dungeon, and they apparently teamed up with another party, all with the aim of reaching the Abyss Gate. Hearing that Thunder Pike is going after his dream is a massive slap in the face to Yuke, and the girls think he must be really upset, but he actually says he is fine. After all, it's not like it's a race, and if he's going to take on the Achromatic dungeon, he wants to do it with Clover and he couldn't care less if Thunder Pike wants to do it before him. He wants to just forget about them and continue with their meal, but then he gets some mail from the guild saying he is being summoned. He and Rain go to see what this is about, and they are informed the party has specifically requested Yuki's help on an upcoming mission of theirs. Yuke is curious about the request at first, but then he sees that it is from Thunder Pike, so he immediately rejects it and goes on with his day. However, a couple minutes later, Simon is informed that Yuke declined the request, so he goes out of his way to track Yuke down and demand an explanation. Yuke was expecting something like this to happen, so he turns to face Simon and Simon demands to know what reason Yuke had for rejecting their request. Yuke tells him there's no special reason behind his decision. He simply doesn't want to work with Thunder Pike under any circumstances, even if it's for his dream. He's honestly surprised that Simon even remembered that his dream was to find an Abyss Gate, but he has no plans on getting involved, so he wishes Simon the best of luck on his mission. Simon tries to guilt Yuke into reconsidering by saying he already started making preparations around Yuki's participation, but that sounds like a Simon problem, so why should he care? In the first place, it was incredibly rude to send a spot request to someone who is already in an active party, and as long as it is a request, Yuke has every right to refuse for whatever reason he chooses. Simon gets angry and tells Yuke he is in the wrong for abandoning Thunder Pike, but Yuke is at his limit and yells back that Simon is the one in the wrong here. While Yuke was in Thunder Pike, everything from pre-quest preparations, quest research, and even intel gathering was dumped on Yuke's shoulders, and not once did Simon show any gratitude for all the work he put in. All Simon ever did was use him, so as far as Yuke is concerned, they are no longer friends. Simon is stunned and asks Yuke what he is supposed to do now, since if Thunder Pike fails another quest, they'll be demoted. Again, that's not Yuki's problem to deal with, so he takes Rain's hand and walks away. 2 weeks later, Yuke meets with the guild master and he's got some bad news to share. It looks like a dungeon overflow really is occurring because in addition to what happened to Yuki's party in Ion, there have been several other incidents around the country. Given the circumstances, the Royal Academy couldn't deny the possibility of a dungeon stampede, which is likely why they granted Thunder Pike permission to investigate the Achromatic Darkness. With that said, Benwood wants to nominate Yuke and the rest of Clover for an investment quest in the Achromatic Darkness. Yuke immediately tells Benwood he can't accept the quest because there's no way a C-rank party like Clover can do a job like this. Besides, even if Thunder Pike isn't reliable, there are other A-rank parties included in the Achromatic Dungeon investigation. However, Benwood tells him that the other parties have gotten fed up with Thunder Pike's tricks and backed out of the mission. In fact, it looks like Thunder Pike never actually intended to go on the mission, because they haven't even submitted a formal application for the mission. Benwood then pulls out a logbook and shows it to Yuke, but Yuke already knows exactly what this is, because it is the only conquest log of the last mission into the Achromatic Dungeon, and in it there is proof that the Abyss Gate exists. That's exactly why Benwood wants Yuke to do the investigation, because he is passionate about the Abyss Gate, and if it's him, any reports he makes can be completely trusted. He isn't asking Yuke to conquer the entire dungeon, he just wants him to take a look inside. But to do that, Yuke would have to fight his way through the dungeon, and he thinks that would be too risky. Benwood understands his concerns, which is why he is willing to give Yuke this for the quest. It is a scroll of exit, and with it, Yuke can leave the dungeon instantly whenever he wants, so Benwood asks Yuke to reconsider. Just then, Mommer comes in and hands Yuke the formal request form for this mission, and it says he will be joining a party called King of Lamelia, and his party will be granted provincial A-rank status for the duration of the mission. This is starting to sound like a really big deal, so Yuke says he needs to talk to his party members about it before making a decision. After getting home, Yuke tells the girls about the request, and tells them that he is actually thinking of turning it down. The girls are surprised that he would reject such a huge opportunity, and Yuke understands that participating would be a great boost for the party, but he doesn't think they are ready for it. There's still a ton of experience and preparations they are missing, but while they can't do much about their lack of experience, Silk tells Yuke that they can still make the necessary preparations before the mission begins. Rain asks Yuke if he's scared for some reason, and Yuke hadn't thought about it till now, but he really is scared. He's worried that he might lose the girls if they take on a dangerous mission like this, because that's the last thing he would want to happen. The girls feel the same way about him, but they promise to do everything they can to make sure they come back from the mission safely, so Yuke can trust them to handle themselves. Yuke realizes he was being overly cautious and apologizes to the girls for not believing in them. They all agree to take on the Achromatic Dungeon together, and later that day the group heads back to the guild to tell Benwood that they are accepting the quest. But they talked it over and they may need an extra person, so they ask if he can introduce them to a good scout. Mommer has expected something like this, so she already has someone lined up. This is Nene, and she's the daughter of one of Mommer's friends, but after one too many pranks, she got banned from her homeland. So Mommer took her in and helped her change her life around. Nene introduces herself as a former Fursy thief, but now she is an C-rank ninja, and she promises to make herself useful to the team, so she asks to be hired as their scout. That brings the episode to an end. Thanks for watching. Want next part? Subscribe the channel and turn on notification bell.